He stood at the edge of the fire, the most powerful object in the world, in the palm of his hand. One step, that's all it would have taken. One step, and thousands of years of darkness would have ended right there. But he didn't take it. And because of that single moment, the world would bleed for another 3,000 years. This is the story of Isildur, the man who saved the world and then condemned it. Before there was a ring, before there was a war, before any of it, there was a civilization so powerful the gods themselves destroyed it, and Isildur watched it sink beneath the waves. To understand why he made the choice he made, you have to understand where he came from. Isildur was a Númenorian, and if you don't know what that means, it means he was as close to a god as a man could be. Númenor was the greatest kingdom of men that ever existed, an island given to humanity as a reward for their courage in the wars against Morgoth, Sauron's master. Its people were tall, wise, long-lived. They were sailors, warriors, scholars, the finest of their kind. Isildur and his brother Anarion were sons of Elendil, one of the most powerful lords in Númenor, and they were part of a group called the Faithful, men who still revered the Valar, still kept the old ways, still refused to bow to the corruption spreading through their kingdom, because Númenor was rotting from the inside. Sauron, captured, brought to the island as a prisoner, had done what he always does. He whispered, he manipulated, he turned the king against the gods themselves, and Númenor, in its arrogance, sailed west to wage war on the undying lands. The Valar called upon Ilúvatar himself, and Númenor was swallowed by the sea, gone, in a single night. The greatest civilization of men, erased. But Isildur survived. He and his father Elendil, his brother Anarion, they had seen it coming. They loaded their ships with everything they could carry: the Palantiri, the seeing stones, seeds from the white tree, their people, and they fled east into Middle-earth as the waves consumed everything they had ever known. They arrived on the shores of a broken world, and they built something new. Elendil founded the kingdom of Arnor in the north. Isildur and Anarion together founded Gondor in the south, building the great cities of Minas Ithil and Minas Anor. Two brothers, two towers, two flames keeping the legacy of Númenor alive. But Sauron had survived too, and he had not forgotten the faithful. Everyone knows Isildur as the man who kept the ring, but almost nobody knows what he did before that. And when you hear it, it changes everything. Because the man history remembers is weak. He once broke into a king's fortress, alone, at night. Nearly died doing it. Let's start there. Before Númenor fell, before the ships, before the war, before any of it, Isildur did something that should have gotten him killed. The king of Númenor, under Sauron's influence, ordered the white tree to be cut down. Nimloth, the sacred tree of the faithful, a symbol of everything Isildur's family stood for. The king wanted it gone. Isildur heard the news, and he said nothing. Then he went out alone, at night, in disguise. He walked all the way to Armenelos, the royal city, and broke into the king's own courts, a place forbidden to men like him, always guarded. He moved through the shadows, found the tree, and stole a fruit from it before the axes arrived. The guards caught him on the way out. He fought his way free. Barely. He was so badly wounded that he came close to death, lying still for weeks, his family unsure if he would survive. He did survive. And the seed he carried? It grew. It became the white tree of Gondor, the same tree whose line Aragorn would one day restore. One man, one night, one act of quiet, reckless defiance, and the symbol of an entire civilization was saved. That's Isildur. And physically, this was not a small man. Tolkien himself noted that Isildur stood 7 feet tall, a giant by any measure. When he walked into a room or onto a battlefield, people knew it. Which brings us to something else the films got wrong. Most people picture Isildur's death at the Gladden Fields as the death of a careless man, someone drunk on victory, no watch set, caught sleeping. An embarrassing end for a great king. That's not what Tolkien wrote. In the Unfinished Tales, Tolkien's deeper lore, Isildur is portrayed as a sharp, capable commander right up to the end. When the orcs came, he didn't panic. He formed his men, he fought back, he actually repulsed the first assault. His soldiers held. He was in control, but he was outnumbered 10-1, against a force that was unnervingly well organized, almost as if something was driving them, commanding them. The ring, calling its servants home. He didn't lose because he was weak or foolish. He lost because the enemy cheated, because the ring itself was working against him from the inside. Remember that when we get to his final moments. Imagine laying siege to a fortress for 7 years. No retreat, no surrender, watching your brother die, watching your king fall, and then, when the Dark Lord himself walks onto the battlefield, being the one still standing. That was Isildur at the last alliance. But to understand how it got there, we need to go back to just before the war began. Sauron had moved first. He marched on Gondor and captured Minas Ithil, Isildur's own city. He burned it. He destroyed the white tree that grew there. He took everything Isildur had built, and that act of destruction is what lit the fuse. Elendil looked north to the elven king Gil-galad, and together they formed the last alliance of elves and men, the greatest army the world had seen since the War of Wrath. They marched on Mordor. What followed was not a battle, it was a siege. 7 years. 7 years they camped outside the Black Gate, outside Barad-dûr, grinding Sauron's forces down year by year. 7 years of death and attrition, of holding the line when every instinct screamed retreat. Anarion died during that siege. A stone cast from the Dark Tower crushed him. Isildur lost his brother, and still he held. When Sauron finally emerged, when the Dark Lord himself stepped onto the battlefield, it was already too late for many. He killed Gil-galad with his bare hands. He killed Elendil, shattering Narsil beneath him. Isildur watched his father die. He grabbed the shards of the broken sword, and with the hilt, he cut the One Ring from Sauron's finger. Sauron's physical form collapsed. His armies fled. The war was over. The last alliance had won. He was standing at the edge of Mount Doom, the ring in his hand. Sauron defeated. The war over. All he had to do was let go. He didn't. And that single decision, that one moment, would haunt the world for 3,000 years. Cast it in. Destroy it. End it now, while you have the chance. While Sauron is diminished, and the ring has no master to call it home. Isildur refused. He called it his were-guild, his compensation for the death of his father and his brother, his prize, his right. And here is where the tragedy of Isildur truly begins. Because Isildur was not a weak man, he was not a coward. He had spent 7 years at war. He had watched everyone he loved die. He had bled for this victory, but the ring was already working on him. Tolkien is clear about this. The moment Isildur took the ring, it began to corrupt him. It made itself precious to him. It whispered that he had earned it, that he deserved it, that destroying it would be a waste. He marched north, back toward Arnor, intending to take up rule there. The ring on his finger. Safe, he thought. He wrote about it in a scroll, a detailed account of the ring, its markings, its weight, its feel. A scholar's observations. A man already obsessed. They reached the Gladden Fields, a wide, marshy stretch along the river Anduin. And the orcs came. Thousands of them. An ambush prepared for exactly this moment. His escort was slaughtered almost instantly. Isildur told his sons to run. 3 of them died fighting. One, Valandil, the youngest, who had stayed behind in Rivendell, survived only by accident of being away. Isildur put on the ring. He vanished, invisible, as the ring could make its bearer, and threw himself into the river, trying to swim to safety. But the ring betrayed him. It slipped from his finger, as if it wanted to be lost, as if it was choosing to fall. It slid off into the cold water of the Anduin, and the moment it did, Isildur became visible again. The orc arrows found him instantly. He died in that river, in the dark, alone. The man who had cut the ring from Sauron's hand, killed the moment the ring decided he was no longer useful. The ring sank to the bottom of the river, and there it waited, for 60 years, until a creature named Deagol pulled it from the mud on a fishing trip. But that is another story. Isildur died in a river, alone, betrayed by the very thing he refused to destroy. But his story didn't end there, because 3,000 years later, his blood sat on the throne of Gondor, and the ring was finally destroyed. Valandil survived, and through him, the bloodline of Númenor continued. Through the kings of Arnor, through the rangers of the north, through centuries of shadow and diminishment, until it reached a young man raised in Rivendell who called himself Strider, Aragorn, the last heir of Isildur, the one who finally got to finish what his ancestor started. When Aragorn stood before the army of the dead, men cursed by Isildur himself for breaking their oath, he was undoing his ancestors' knot, fulfilling the legacy, correcting the record. And when the ring was finally destroyed, when Frodo dropped it into the fires of Mount Doom, it was Isildur's failure being undone at last. 3,000 years later. That is the scale of one man's choice. One moment at the edge of the fire. One refusal. And the entire Third Age of Middle-earth was shaped by it. Every war, every death, every darkness that followed. All of it traces back to that riverbank at the Gladden Fields and to the crack of doom where Isildur turned away. Isildur is not a villain. That's the point. He was a great man, maybe one of the greatest men who ever lived. He survived the drowning of his civilization. He fought for 7 years without breaking. He cut the ring from the Dark Lord's hand with a broken sword. But greatness doesn't make you immune to weakness. And the ring didn't need him to be evil. It just needed him to be human. The enemy doesn't always win through power. Sometimes it wins through the smallest, most understandable failure. I deserve this. 3 words. 3,000 years of consequences. If you want to go deeper, there are endless roads from here. Let me know in the comments where you want to go next. And if you're new here, welcome. This is a place for stories. The old ones, the forgotten ones, and a few that haven't been told yet.